K-Feng SMM had deployed a full lance of light mechs nearly a kilometer forward as advanced scouts, a mixture of regular forces and mercenary. They passed along the edge of the jungle, walking the Chinchang River Road in single file. One battle mech, a mercenary Mercury bringing up the rear, paused to scan the jungle, but it was only a cursory inspection using standard sensors. The jungle was out of range for the mech's Beagle active probe, and the pilot evidenced no desire to leave the easy-traveling surface of the road. After all, they knew where and when the attack was going to take place, didn't they? Binding Force, page 204, by Lauren L. Coleman. In the past few videos, we've had the privilege of covering some pretty solid machines. Some were foundational designs that were among the first battle mechs to stomp out onto the battlefield. Others were Succession Wars favorites built to last rather than to thrill or to demonstrate technology. Today we're going to take a turn and look at a little battle mech that was notable because it represented the pinnacle of design during the Star League. While the Mercury's peers at the 20-ton class like the Locust, Wasp, and Stinger could pride themselves on being easy to use and abuse, the Mercury design team went another way. If the Wasp and Stinger were the Toyota Camrys of battle mechs, the Mercury was the Audi R8 supercar. The MCY-99 Mercury was the brainchild of the design team at Mitchell Vehicles, who intended to take advantage of several new pieces of technology to create a strong successor to the existing 20-ton battle mechs like the Wasp and Stinger. The mech that stomped off the assembly lines on Graham 4 was to be better armed, faster, and stronger than any previous mech at its weight. As one of the SLDF's longtime contractors, Mitchell Vehicles quickly secured a contract and began production on the advanced design. All of the early production runs were funneled into the direct control of the SLDF in order to prevent the technology from filtering out into the great houses and periphery. But what made the Mercury so special and so coveted by the SLDF brass? Constructed from a Bergen 1012 chassis wrapped around an LTV 160 Fusion engine, the Mercury was intended to at least match the fastest battle mechs in existence. The addition of Myomer accelerator signal circuitry pushed the 130 km/h top speed to close to 172 km/h for short duration. Manipulating the flow of signals to the battle mech's Myomer bundles could drastically increase their performance, but frequent use could damage actuators and risk seizing up the entire system. Shifting from an 8-12-0 movement profile to 8-16 did indeed make the Mercury a speedy foe. Once the gyro, cockpit, and 10 single heatsinks were crammed in, the next innovation had its moment to shine. 3 tons of cutting-edge Mitchell 91 ferrofibrous armor provided 54 points of protection. While this might not seem like much, it was 12% more armor coverage than the Wasp 1A or Stinger 3R could provide with their 3 tons of standard plate. Technically, that is better, and we all know that being technically correct is the best type of correct. Of course, all the fancy equipment doesn't do much for you if you can't do something destructive when you arrive at your destination. To aid in that, a pair of Martel medium lasers were installed, split between the right arm and left torso. At cuttling range, a pair of Hessen 9 small lasers were added, placed into the head and center torso. Beyond the Mercury's ability to bring 3 tons worth of weaponry into battle, the lasers themselves were somewhat notable technology because they were mounted in a way that allowed for easy transfer should a laser need to be replaced through normal wear and tear or battle damage. This ability to quickly swap out parts was seen as a big step forward in battle mech design. In fact, it would end up a crucial step forward in Omni-Mech technology centuries down the road. Mitchell Vehicles believed that this ease of repair was a crucial selling point that would end up setting a standard for future battle mech development. Unfortunately, a little spat called the First Succession War would put an end to those aspirations. With a Datalink 401 comlink and a Skyhunter 4 targeting and tracking system, the MCY-99 Mercury was sold as a very fast yet still potent scout which could outlast older designs. With its very deliberate setup to allow for ease of maintenance and repair, Mitchell knew it had itself a winner. She floated a dark reticule over the Mercury, closing in on her position, one finger poised over the button that would power up her active scanners. If we can keep their scouts from learning how many we have out here, they might just throw good mechs after bad. Now! Her fingers stabbed down and all auxiliary screens lit up with scanner information. Her HUDs showed 3 enemy lances debarked, 2 within firing range of St. Ives units. As her targeting reticule burned a solid gold, she glanced to one auxiliary screen just long enough to see the Star League crest riding the Mercury's shoulder. "You can't hide behind your office, cousin." She pulled back on both triggers, lighting off all 4 of her lasers and also the Gauss rifle. Threads of Ambition, page 110, by Lauren L. Coleman. Many of the new MCY-99 Mercuries ended up in the premier SLDF units, so it's no surprise to learn that many of them were packed up into cargo holds of dropships and jump ships and carried out into the periphery with Alexander Kerensky's Exodus fleet. Those that were left behind became victims of circumstance and their use of advanced technology. The very technology that gave the Mercury an edge over the other 20-tonners became anchors around the mech's legs as the inner sphere descended into the horrors of the First Succession War. When the Mitchell vehicle's Mercury production line was destroyed, spare parts for the BattleMech quickly became scarce. Without the ability to repair mask-damaged Myomer and replace ferrofibrous armor, Mercury owners were forced to improvise. Their efforts to keep the BattleMech functional resulted in our first official variant of the day, the Succession Wars MCY-98 refit. The 98 Mercury looked a lot like the original sans 2 items, the first being the mask system, which reduced the mech's top speed to 130 km per hour, and the other change was the shift to 4 tons of standard armor from the original 3 tons of ferrofibrous. This additional ton of armor was made available due to the lack of the mask system. Isn't that convenient? 2 medium lasers and 2 small lasers remained untouched from the original. Overall, the Succession Wars Mercury was not as disappointing as it could have been, but without those steady supplies of spare parts, the number would continue to drop over time in the inner sphere. There were just not enough produced before the First Succession War to make it anywhere near as ubiquitous as the other mechs like the Locust, Wasp, and Stinger. Franklin began to rise, but McEvedy waved him to sit. "There is more, Franklin. I'm stepping up our new mech programs, especially the Stag and Mercury 2. Having new designs in our inventory might catch some of our more aggressive adversaries off guard. I have already ordered training stepped up, with our sibling companies to produce us more warriors. I am also having our troops execute a series of trials of possession for arms and weapons. I fear that this may turn ugly. We are best to be prepared." Betrayal of Ideals, page 39, by Blaine Lee Pardoe. While the already small number of Mercuries dwindled in the inner sphere, those safely nestled in Kerensky's Exodus fleet were put to good use. Though some saw action and were destroyed during Operation Klondike, a few were identified as the technological advances that they really were, especially by scientists in Clan Coyote who looked at the semi-modular nature of the Mercury's construction and ran with it. Often called the Golden Century, the years 2830 through 2930 were a tremendously valuable time for the clans. One of the more notable discoveries made during that time was the Clan Coyote Omnimech, which had direct ties to the work they did with the Mercury. However, before that, there was also another Mercury connection to the clans, specifically Clan Wolverine's update to the Mercury platform with the latest and greatest technology. The MCY-100 Mercury 2 was very much a brand new BattleMech, but I think it's cool and we're going to talk about it anyway. It's one of the benefits of being the entire editorial team here. The Mercury 2 was first produced in 2823, technically 7 years before the beginning of the Golden Century, but we're not going to be sticklers about it. The biggest change to the design was the doubling of the mech's mass to 40 tons. I did warn you it was an entirely new mech, but you didn't believe me. Constructed from a standard frame but wrapped around a 280 light fusion engine, the Mercury 2's movement profile capped out at 711.7. The addition of 7 jump jets gave our plucky friend its first opportunity to leap through the sky like Mini Frog after eating a large bowl of ice cream. 7.5 tons of ferrofibrous armor provided 134 points of protection, which was a half-ton more than the 40-ton Viper Omnimech and matched the armor of the Ice Ferret. After the addition of the gyro and cockpit, that left 11 tons of mass for weaponry and gear. The Mercury 2's primary weapon was an ER large laser set into the left arm, but it was backed up by 2 standard medium lasers set into the right arm and center torso, in a slight nod toward the original 20-ton inspiration. 2 emotional support small lasers were set into the left arm and offered a nice close-up conflict resolution tool. Finally, to retain the original Mercury's role as a swift scout, a Guardian ECM suite was added to the left torso, and a Beagle active probe was installed into the right torso. Fast enough at 40 tons to scout, strong enough to take a few hits, and able to dish out damage before slinking off into the undergrowth, the Mercury 2 was a valuable tool for Clan Wolverine. It's important to note that the Mercury 2 is also considered a prerequisite of the OmniMech program. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any references to the machine after Betrayal of Ideals. However, if it was exclusively a Wolverine design, the other clans may have shunned its use after the Wolverines were obliterated. All except those ferreted away by the Coyotes, of course. The Hermes was concentrating on a Wolverine Mercury 2 to his left. Franklin torso twisted and fired his lasers. The emerald beams seared the air, catching the legs of the Hermes just as the Mercury 2 unleashed its pair of medium lasers. The Hermes was caught in the crossfire, everything hitting it below the waist. The Wolf Warrior was good. He dodged backwards to concentrate on the Mercury 2. The smaller Wolverine fired its small lasers, aiming low as well. There was a puff of white smoke, and the Wolverine Khan saw the Hermes drop. Betrayal of Ideals, page 202, by Blaine Lee Pardoe. Thankfully, the story of the Mercury doesn't end here. Not among the clans and not within the Inner Sphere. The next official variant for the plucky Mercury hit in 3049 and counts as our Helm Memory Core upgrade. It returned the BattleMech to its original form, with 3 tons of ferrofibrous armor and the mask system in the center torso. However, the 97 was armed with just a single standard medium laser in the right arm and a small laser in the center torso. The remaining mass was dedicated to a Beagle active probe set into the left torso. Clearly intended to be a scouting machine, the MCY-97 joined the MCY-99s on the side of the Comm Guard on Tukayyid, either in battle or striker level 2s. Both the 97 and 99 are solid machines, and there aren't any sources that report the Comm Guard Mercuries being blown to bits in hilarious ways, so we have to infer that they did alright. The 97s were produced on a new Mitchell vehicle production line on Gram 4, and it breathed new life into the previously rarely seen design. Additionally, Precentor Marshal Vogt ordered 3 production lines on Terra revamped for production of both the 99 and 97 variants. They worked diligently throughout the 3050s, though 2 of the lines would be later retooled again to produce the brand new Nexus BattleMech. Though the free selection of venue was supposed to make up for any advantage gained by the winner of the coin selection, the clans took other steps to ensure that the Bloodright battles were approximately fair. Thus, Phelan had been issued a Mercury for his fight with Eadeh, rather than his Wolfhound. The light mech was well known for its reconnaissance ability, but its weaponry was only slightly better than what an elemental had. None of the mech's weapons could put Eadeh down in one shot, which was precisely why they had assigned him this battle mech. Blood of Kerensky, Lost Destiny, page 1169, by Michael A. Stackpole. In one of the more notable moments where the Mercury scuttled into human history, Phelan Kell, of all people, would end up piloting the mech during his next-to-last blood-named trial on the 17th of April in 3052. A wolf elemental named Eadeh had run roughshod over his competitors in the previous rounds of the trials because of his unorthodox tactics and eagerness to fight warriors outside of their mechs and aerospace fighters. When it was Phelan's turn to face him, Eadeh wasn't able to avoid augmented combat, but in the interests of keeping it fair, Phelan was given a Mercury with which to fight. There's a great line in the book immediately after Phelan pulls the top coin. Stackpole writes that Phelan had expected to give the elemental trouble, but the huge man shrugged it off as if Phelan had demanded water pistols at 20 paces. Point for Eadeh for playing it cool. Eadeh chose to fight the trial among the close-knit buildings of the Camelot Industrial Park on Lothan, which limited the Mercury's ability to find and lay down fire on the comparatively small elemental. Searching through the streets in the plucky Mercury, Phelan was forced to give up the mech's primary advantage of speed, and even after taking fire, he was having trouble figuring out the source. Eventually, Phelan was able to isolate Eadeh to a single structure which was clad in mirrored glass. Instead of just smashing into the building, Phelan used the BattleMech's external speakers to create feedback so powerful that it shattered the building's windows, exposing the elemental inside. The Mercury's left arm came up, and the medium laser built into its forearm flashed to life. It hit Eadeh dead center while the elemental seemed to be trying to wave him off. Phelan wondered at the man's audacity and prepared for a second shot. "It's over, Eadeh." A boiling, vaporous sheet of yellow flame instantly engulfed the whole building. Blood of Kerensky, Lost Destiny, page 1171, by Michael A. Stackpole. The next Mercury, the MCY-102, wouldn't hit the scene until 3067 at the request of the word of Blake, who wanted to update the design to incorporate an improved C3 computer. The 812-0 movement profile, mask, and 3 tons of ferrofibrous armor were retained, but the loadout was shifted. An ER medium laser was installed into the right arm, and an ER small laser was set into the open head critical location. There's not much to say about this with the addition of that improved C3 computer. It's functional, you can't overheat it while on the run, and firing those lasers like an irresponsible middle schooler holding a Roman candle on the 4th of July is always fun. If you like the improved C3 computer, then go wild. If you're keen on the C3 but still want more out of your Scout, the MCY-104, which hit the battlefields 2 years later in 3069, saw the first implementation of an extra light fusion engine and endosteel to buy 4 additional tons of mass. So while the price tag did go up, the offensive power of the 104 rose as well. In addition to the improved C3, which was a carryover from the 102, the Mercury carried 2 ER medium lasers in the right arm, the ER small laser in the head, and target acquisition gear in the center torso. While obviously a more useful Scout with that tag able to spot for artillery, some may have to balance capabilities, cost, and their personal risk tolerance. Megamech reports that the Mercury 104 will run the buyer nearly 3.7 million C-bills. It's a little pricey for a 20-ton battlemech. But then again, if this is the word of Blake, money is no object. I'm curious what happened with the MCY-103. I'm going to choose to believe that it was a lost prototype that featured a couple of flamers and perhaps an Inferno SRM-2 launcher. Oh, a frog can dream. Our last official variant, and the one most recent in the timeline, is the MCY-105, which debuted in 3092. It represents a partial return to a simpler form without the fancy tag or active probes. It even eschews the traditional mask system in favor of a larger 240 XL fusion engine, which pushed the movement profile to 1218. Endosteel shaved off a ton of mass, which was quickly expended on a 4th ton of ferrofibrous armor, pushing the total protection to 69 points. Not too shabby. Scoble Mechworks, located on Terra, had a good idea when they wanted to concentrate their efforts to create a light battlemech that didn't go too far with the fancy bells and whistles that might make it too niche. The traditional 10 single heat sinks were upgraded to the double variety, which made sure that the Mercury 105 would never suffer any heat issues. Speaking of heat, the loadout leans into a more of a raider role rather than a light Scout with a pair of ER medium lasers, one in the right arm and one in the left torso. At short range, a pair of ER small lasers were set into the center torso and head, offering their modest damage. Overall, the MCY-105 is a very utilitarian design. While it does have that XL engine to worry about, I'm personally much less concerned about them on light battlemechs, because as we know, mech warriors in light mechs tend to live short but glorious lives. You may as well take every advantage possible before you shuffle that mortal coil. The 105 is a solid light mech, and it could be just annoying enough on the battlefield to draw fire while its bigger brothers and sisters stomp in to ruin everyone's day. The key is to stay alive long enough to enjoy the after-party. They were committed now, no matter what was waiting for them up there, no matter how late they were already. Suddenly a stilt-legged shape moved across Alex's forward view, a squat, rounded body with ungainly arms. A Mercury. Not one of his. A PPC fired to Alex's right, and a blue-white bolt of charged plasma streaked into the unfortunate 20-ton Scout mech, blowing a massive chunk out of its side. One arm spun away into the woods as lightning danced and sparked across its body and arced to the ground. Tactics of Duty, page 264, by William H. Keith, Jr. Thanks to my always present need for affirmation and attention, I did take a crack at creating a totally unofficial and non-canon Mercury. I designated it the MCY-1MF, and I think it could be a nasty little bugger on the battlefield. It was built using the MCY-105 as the template, though I did add an extra light gyro, which bought another ton of mass in exchange for additional gyro critical locations in the center torso. The 4 tons of ferrofibrous armor wasn't touched, nor were the 10 double heatsinks. With the 12-18 movement profile, I resisted the urge to add the mask back in, instead focusing on meeting the goal of creating a Mercury which could lay waste to large numbers of infantry and battle armor without slowing down. I left the traditional ER medium laser in the right arm for a mid-range threat, but pulled the other lasers in favor of more intimate tools of eradication. 4 light machine guns split between the left and right torso provided motivation to keep your head down out to 6 hexes. They were all fed by a half-ton of ammunition stored in the right torso. Finally, if that isn't enough, an ER flamer in the left arm can liven up your life should a staccato of automatic weapons fire not do the trick. What looks like a short-range fighter could excel out to 4 to 5 hexes and still be an annoyance set out to 12. Being able to run 18 hexes makes return fire a pain so long as you're always running pedal to the metal. ABM, always be moving. If you'd like to give the Mercury 1MF a try, I've included the free PDF record sheet for it in a Dropbox link in the video notes below. So why do we love the Mercury? Well, if you remembered it existed, you're halfway there, so good on you. The BattleTech universe has quite a few good 20-ton scout mechs to choose from, and I think it can be really difficult to compete with the big names like Locust, Stinger, and Wasp. Not to mention heavier machines like the Raven, which come up whenever people are talking about electronic warfare. The Mercury trots somewhere in the middle. The strongest case for our little Mercury is the strength of the lore behind it. As a prerequisite creation for later Omnimechs, the Mercury is incredibly important in the history of battlemech design. It feels like an understatement that the mech has the easy-to-maintain quirk, knowing all that will come down later in the timeline. I like the Mercury. It's pretty adorable, and I like an underrepresented battlemech just by default. Who doesn't like an underdog? But I'm curious what you think about our little 20-ton friend. Is it a staple of your battle lists, or did you forget that it existed before stumbling across this video? Is there a variant that you think is peak Mercury? Let me know in the comments and we'll keep the discussion going. With that, I'll say thank you for sticking around this long and listening to me blather. It's so much fun digging through this lore and compiling what is really just a fancy book report for you each week. Another big thanks to the MechFrog Discord server for always having such well-painted mechs to share for the upcoming week's video. If you'd like to join, I'm going to add the server's link to the video notes below. Come hang out, it's mostly painless. Mostly. If you thought the video was worthwhile, hitting that like and subscribe button lets YouTube's algorithm know that it's worth sharing with others, and you're much more likely to see my nonsense in the future. If you want to go one step further and support the channel through Ko-fi or becoming a YouTube member, it keeps the nonsense flowing. To all those who already have, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means so much to me that you've placed your trust in me to keep improving as a content creator. With that, I'll say have a great week, happy 4th of July, and please go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.